that not only reminds you using visual and light sounds that you need to take your medication, but it refills your pharmacy, prescription from a pharmacy directly. It also sends a weekly update. Here's more. It calls your cell phone or your home phone if you haven't taken the medication for 2 hours for when it's supposed to be taken. Now, isn't that nice? Won't our parents love it? Some of us actually would love that. Future. Anyone take a guess what this might be? The physicians in the room probably shouldn't answer this. This might serve as a clue. DNA. This is mapping the human genome. Sidney Torrell, the CEO of Eli Lilly, made a great comment. For the last 50 years, we've been working on the first pharmaceutical revolution. What does that mean? We've been tailoring molecules, and everyone takes the same molecule. Everyone takes the same aspirin, acetaminophen, whatever the drug of your choice is. What this is doing is Ion Torrent has a human genome device that has significantly reduced the cost of mapping the human genome. Similar to what happened in the technology revolution in the late 90s, we have an opportunity potentially where medicine is going to get personalized. Your genome and your DNA will dictate what drugs you take to fix your problems. You won't take every medicine off the counter, but something that might be tailored to your needs. This, my friends, is very revolutionary and potentially the thing that changes the game for pharma companies and medicine around the world. On a smaller scale, albeit, a company called Xcode based in Chennai is actually working on something similar. They are using what you'll call a spit test, a saliva test, to map, do some DNA marker testing, and to be able to predict what diseases you might encounter in the future. It remains to be seen how successful or unsuccessful they'll be, but that's where they stand today. Here's my last closing slide. We can build solutions. The consumer is very, very powerful in India. We pay most of our healthcare costs out of our pocket. The folks who are creating solutions for us can bring one solution together or choose to bring a set of solutions for the consumer. Here's why that's important in the healthcare system. From the way we bank to the way we shop, technology has become part of our daily lives and has changed the way we do these things. However, we still carry plastic bags with reports when we go to hospitals. I hope that changes for India soon. And technology, in my opinion, is one of the key things that changes that. So with that, I'll stop. And thank you for your time. And let me introduce the speaker right after me. Saurabh is the head of global services for Orange Business and is a leader in consulting, project management, and service management practices. And today he'll talk about how to become Hospital 2.0.
Thanks, Adi. Good evening, everybody. You know, when you're the last few speakers at the end of the day, there isn't much that hasn't already been said or that you haven't heard. You know, if you're the second speaker, you probably think someone stole a little bit of my thunder, but at the end of the day, probably there's no thunder left. But anyway, let's see what we can do with Hospital 2.0. So I just wanted to start with a little bit of fact and figures, and again, I'm sure you've seen this. You know, it's nothing new. And, you know, it says in India about 25% of deaths in the age group of 25 to 69, that's a large part of the population, occurs because of heart disease. And of course, there are solutions available today. And it talks about implanted devices that do cardiac rhythm management, sending data real time via mobile phones or via wireless to your doctors, you know, an alert popping up on your doctor's screen, and then he calling you back proactively. Another one, which is a little bit closer to my heart, okay? Actually closer to my pancreas is about diabetes. So 346 million worldwide, 50.8 million patients in India, world's largest diabetes population, a dubious distinction. Of course, I'm also contributing a little bit to that, but that's about it. And then, what is it that we're doing with this? We sure love our sweets. We love our sedentary lifestyle and not the best of exercises. But then, how is this relating to the hospital 2.0 or a hospital of the future? And there you see, again, a small solution that's available saying, doctor diabetes application sending data to your doctors, reducing patient care costs by 73%. And we'll talk a little bit about it in a few minutes. So how was all of this relating to Hospital 2.0? Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm an IT professional. So what do I know about Hospital 2.0? So the best way to find out was go ask doctors, analysts, patients, and of course, futurologists. And just to be on track and just to make sure that we got the right context, we asked them the question, what will be the future of the hospitals, or what will the future hospital look like? And we said, just to be very clear, let's not talk about future as in the real future. Let's talk about the relevant future, which is the next 3 or 4 years. Because we all know in the next 30, 40 years, hospitals are probably going to be chip replacement centers, correct? Organ regeneration centers. Even before, just, when the embryo is conceived, they'll probably be implanting a chip into it to make sure that, you never have an organ failure for the rest of your life. And if you lose a limb, you're able to regenerate it. And the doctor, all he does is he probably changes a microchip. So let's not go into the realm of science fiction. And let's keep it to the next 3 or 4 years and say, where's Hospital 2.0 going to be? And we asked this question, and of course we received, of course people had their own views, while all of them probably said the same thing. There were a couple of ones which really stood out. So the first one I really want to read out was, someone said, hospitals will go from being places that diagnose and treat diseases to true healthcare facilities, focusing on wellness and disease prevention. It sounded great, but being an IT professional again, to me it sounded more like management jargon. I didn't understand it. I understand binary, 1 and 0, yes, no, and this seemed a little bit complicated. So I said, let's explore this a little bit more. And then we said, can you break it down to something which I could understand? And then they broke it down, and then it became very surgical. Someone said, hospital of the future, the objective is to slash error rates to improve clinical care. That sounded pretty good. The other one, which was even more surprising, said, the objective is to reduce patient stress to encourage healing. Now, there you are. It's begin to sound less like the traditional hospital that we know it, and more like a spa that you may probably think about. Then someone said something which was very surprising. It said, hospitals will become patient-centric, and patient care will be the foundation. Now, this is extremely interesting. Insurers today are now trying to put in new plans that are saying, we will not pay you based upon the number of procedures or the kind of treatments, but on the quality of the care that you have received. Hospitals are being asked to prove, so sleep apnea, then there are devices that are available that, that you hook on and you keep them. So insurers are saying, how do we know that the patients are actually using these devices? Give us the proof that these devices are being used. And then hospitals are saying, that means I need to monitor these devices. So now you're getting into monitoring of these devices that the hospitals is providing. So let's look at what hospital of the future. This is what we heard. And then I said, how do I validate what people are saying is exactly what's happening? So for me, the best way was to look at what we did internally. So Orange Healthcare, we operate in about 20 countries, and we do a number of projects. So I said, let's go back and look at all these projects that we do with our customers, which are hospitals or end users, and see how are they aligned to what these doctors or futurologists are saying. And you see the variety that we do, and it sort of comes back. If you see the top left, you see France, you see e-imaging cloud solutions. So it's now talking about picture archiving, putting them into the cloud. So hospitals worrying less about the data that they're going to store, more about what they could do with the images, so patient-centric. Europe and North America, working along with the Sorian group, we've got remote monitoring of patients with cardiac arrhythmia. Again, it's more about the patient, being patient-centric, forgetting, that the patient must come to the hospital, follow-ups, all of that sort of starts to disappear. And again, without going through all of this, what you see is there is a variety of them, and all of them look back at either being patient-centric or reducing error rates, as they called it. Which is either, and if you look at that, if you see on the, say, you see Senegal, the digitization of medical financial flows. Now, this is talking about reduction of error rates. What I've understood from doctors is one of the biggest challenges in hospitals or where errors occur is when they hand off patients from one place to another. So maybe from an ICU to another ward or from one room to the other because either the records weren't rightly tagged or because the records weren't carried around or they weren't being tracked. So those are the error rates that hospitals are now trying to reduce and control. And of course, technology is always there. We already heard probably about smart beds, beds that are monitoring the patient. Patient walks in and gets tagged with an RFID tag. It stays with him for the life cycle of his visit in the hospital. So there is no question of it being missed or, finding out that there's something else was supposed or some other procedure was scheduled for this patient. So we look at now a little bit of the technology side of one of the solutions we talked about, which was the cloud-based picture archiving or communication systems, or teleradiology. So it's an innovation. It's an innovation to say that hospitals need, imaging is an integral part of any hospital. Now, of course, as imaging technology is advancing, the amount of data that is generating is advancing as well. So again, I looked up some facts, figures. Again, not knowing this and looking at this as a layman, I said, how much does a typical CT scan, what would be the size of the data that it generates when you store it in digital format? And it said, with the new generation of multi-detector CT scans, with a 16-slice scanner, you generate about 500 or 2,000 slices, which is roughly about 1 gig of data per case that you work upon. For a hospital, a large hospital that probably generates between 30 to 60,000 images every year, you're talking about 600 terabytes of data that the hospital is going to generate. Now that's a massive amount of data that you're generating. Do the hospitals really want to get into the business of becoming IT companies, of managing this data, manipulating this data, ensure